Hey everybody, this is Nicole with Topaz. Thanks so much for joining me here today. Today we are going over our Quick Tip Thursday webinar. It's going to be a quick webinar over street photography basics. Basically, we're going to be covering what street photography really means, a shooting list or shooting checklist for you, a couple other tips and some shooting techniques, and then which programs in Topaz will be really helpful for you when you are in your post-processing after you have actually shot your images. So really we're not going to be going into any workflows in Topaz today. All right, with that, let's go ahead and get started. Let's first talk about our shooting checklist. A lot of shooters or photographers don't know, if they're not familiar with shooting street photography, but really you do not need a lot of equipment, and you don't really want a lot of equipment either. You're going to be up and moving around. You're going to be shooting quickly and trying to capture moments really quickly when you're shooting on the street. So you definitely want to travel light. You will usually only need one camera and maybe two lenses, but usually just one. And if you do only bring one lens, which I do suggest, make it a wider lens when you're starting out, no more than 50 millimeters, and if you can, go even wider than that. You're going to be up close and personal with people and places, and you really want to make sure that you capture everything in your eyesight. You really want to capture the scene, and you're going to need a wide lens for that. Another suggestion is to pre-focus and set a higher f-stop. Because you are going to be shooting so quickly, think about how far away you're going to be from your subject. So let's say 5 feet. Go ahead and pre-focus at that length and then set a higher f-stop, at least 8, 11, 16, so you can be sure to get everything within that particular depth of field and focus. So that's definitely a tip. And don't be afraid to increase your ISO either. You're going to need, if you're wanting to really capture the scene and stop the scene, you may need to, because you're setting a higher f-stop, you may need to increase your ISO so you can still shoot pretty quickly and have a nice fast shutter speed. And the last thing that I always think about is trying to blend in, not caring if you're kind of still, this really is photography or street photography basics for people who really aren't familiar with street photography. So this is a tip for you guys. Trying to blend in. Don't carry your big camera bag. Maybe bring a shoulder bag that you can throw over your shoulder to keep your extra lens and your memory cards in, and leave that big camera bag or anything that really shouts, "I'm a photographer," at home. So let's go ahead and go on to the next screen here. So let's talk for a minute about what street photography is. It really often means different things to different photographers, but basically it just involves wandering the streets or wandering public places and making photographs of what you're seeing and really what's coming to life before your camera. One thing you need to think about is really what moves you, and most photographers have successful street photography if they really are shooting something that means something to them or what is moving them, and then it will also move the viewer. So that's something to think about as well. But the most important thing I think about street photography is that you're telling a story within a single frame, and you really need to think about all of the elements that are going into your frame and what kind of story they're telling. So whether you're actually shooting on the street or you're shooting in a park or you're shooting in the mall, it's basically just telling a story and really remembering that there's several elements to that story as well. It's also about the term decisive moment, which is something that professional street photographers definitely keep in mind all the time. And if you're not familiar with that term, it was developed by, or kind of coined by, Henry Cartier-Bresson, who is the master of street photography and really was one of the top photographers who started shooting in a 35 millimeter camera and really getting out there amongst the people and shooting people candidly. So definitely, if you're not familiar with him or the decisive moment term, look that up and check that out. Something to look into if you're going to be interested in street photography. many photographers, and street photography in general, tends to be in black and white. Most street photography that you see tends to be in black and white, and there's a reason for that. One major reason is that color can be distracting, especially if you're taking a street scene. You have so many different colors, it makes your eyes wander all around the image, and you really don't focus in on what the photographer was wanting you to see. So as a black and white image, you get to take away that distraction of color, and it really does help to bring the mood of that moment into the image. However, there are certain images that really benefit from color. One of my favorite street photographers, Martin Parr, his images have so much vivid color and very unique color to them, and that really make the image. So it really is just about what the scene calls for when you're in that post-processing, whether or not you need to remove the color or not. So, but don't be afraid to use it. If it works for your image, keep it in. And one of the scariest things about street photography is having to get out there and interact and shoot people who might not want to be shot. Well, that sounded bad, didn't it? Photograph people who might not want to be photographed. So really how you decide to get out there and shoot is your personal choice, whether you get up in somebody's face and really get in there if you have that type of bravery, or if you kind of shoot from the hip or do some other techniques that are a little bit more less aggressive. That really is up to you. But there are some tips on how to kind of be successful in not making people angry. Even though you're scared, there are certain things that will help you. One of them is don't be sneaky and don't try to necessarily hide your camera. People are going to see it, and if they object to you taking it, then just don't take it. You know, you do have to respect somebody who says, you know, don't take my photograph or erase that image. You go ahead and do that. However, smiling immediately after you take the image does start to lessen that aggressiveness that might come from somebody who didn't want to have their photograph taken. And getting out there and actually participating in the scene with people and getting out there and integrating with them will start to lessen your fear as well. Standing on the outside and just kind of being a voyeur, maybe taking a long telephoto lens into a scene, it starts to look a little weird for somebody that's looking at that. So if you can actually get in there and really participate with people, that'll start to lessen your fear as well. And just again, being able to blend in and not stand out so much will make you feel better. I know it does for me. Street photography is something that I don't do every day. It's not my normal medium, but one of the reasons is I am a little bit afraid of people's reaction to me shooting them when they don't want to be shot. But if you get out there and you just really get familiar with the group that you're in and the scene that you're in, it does help. Different shooting techniques. There are several tips for shooting street photography, and one of them that a lot of us know is called shooting from the hip. That's probably the most popular coined street photography technique. Instead of putting the camera up to your face and making yourself known and making it obvious that you're about to take a picture, many photographers actually shoot from the hip. So they pre-focus like we were talking about before and set that high f-stop, and then they just start taking photographs from the hip area where their camera is down by their hip. And this will result in tons of images that may not work for you, and it may result in one image that is spectacular. And that technique is something that you do have to go and practice and really get used to know, what angle to put your camera to really get a good angle and get somebody's face into the image. While we were talking about actually putting the camera up to your eye and shooting in a crowd, do that quickly. Don't sit there behind your lens and keep looking through the viewfinder over and over and over again. When you see a moment start to unfold and you feel like it's just that perfect, decisive moment, put your camera up to your face, take a couple of frames, put the camera back down. To keep that camera into a very subtle position and not really obvious will eliminate some of the looks that street photographers we do get sometimes. Also, one of the things that I really like to do and I find is great, especially when I was first starting out doing some street photography, it is uncomfortable if people know that you're shooting them and they don't like it. One of the things that I like to do is set up even a tripod sometimes if I'm in a busy area and really get the composition of my background really well put. If I have beautiful light and a beautiful composition, I just wait for people to walk through, and I don't even look through the viewfinder at that point because I've already looked and set up my shot. So it becomes less aggressive on everybody's part just to sit there and let people walk in and out of the frame. And when you think that it's a moment, you snap the image. You don't even have to look in there, so that it makes it look like you're not actually taking a picture at the moment. So that's kind of nice. Also, I read this article, I think it was called A Coward's Guide to Street Photography, which I thought was so funny because that's really what I was at first. I was able, they had said, you know, don't be afraid to shoot the back of somebody's head, like this image on the right. If you're shooting, it might be a great image even if it's not their faces. Just be able to shoot the scene and shoot the back of somebody's head can result in a beautiful image. So take all of those things into consideration whenever you're shooting. All right, so those are some basic tips, but how can Topaz help? Topaz, for me, what I end up using the most of is Topaz in Focus and Topaz Denoise to start off with, basically because sometimes you don't get the best focus that you want, and it can really help. Topaz in Focus with capture sharpening, and Denoise, especially if you've set your ISO a little bit higher, that is going to be really helpful. Topaz Adjust for color images. If your color was so much more spectacular than the image actually turned out to be, Topaz Adjust can bring all of that color back and really have that color stand out and make your images really pop. But out of all of Topaz plugins, I'd say the most important for street photography is Topaz Black and White Effects. Many of my street photographs end up being black and white, and this is a very simple way to quickly take in an image and turn it into really beautifully exposed, where the detail is enhanced, along with beautiful tones. Almost instantly through the presets of black and white effects, I can get something that I really enjoy. Elliot asks, can you make some shutter speed suggestions along the way for different situations? Elliot, that's a great point. It kind of depends on what you're wanting to do. If you're wanting to stop the scene completely, then you will need to, I usually say over 1/250th of a second. So that's if you're wanting to stop it completely or faster. And then if you are going through a really fast scene, perhaps you're at a fair and you want to capture the environment and everybody moving around you and the lights going around and around on the Ferris wheel, for example, that type of movement, then you'll need to think about that and think about what you're wanting as far as your background and lower your shutter speed accordingly. So I think it just depends on the scene that you're in, and then once you've figured out your aperture and your shutter speed, then you can work with what your ISO needs to be as well so you can get a good exposure. A couple of people were asking about the photographers that I referenced. I referenced Martin Parr. He is an amazing, I love him so much. And his last name, Martin, is spelled M-A-R-T-I-N, and Parr is P-A-R-R. And then I also referenced Henry Cartier-Bresson, and that is H-E-N-R-I for Henry, and then Cartier-Bresson is C-A-R-T-I-E-R dash B-R-E-S-S-O-N. So quite a few people asked me to spell that. Hope you got that. Peter says, can we not use the long length zoom to capture the image from far away? Absolutely, Peter, you can. And that might be easier to do at first. But it kind of goes against the idea of being in the moment and being a part of the scene and really the idea of street photography. However, it's a great way to start off with because this image here on the right was taken with a zoom lens from farther distance away, again, because it can be intimidating to get up and get in somebody's face and actually ask permission or not ask permission and just start taking pictures. So whatever really, way you can start out working and start out shooting is great. But if you can work up to actually getting involved and getting familiar with certain places and going through that process, it might be a lot more fun too. Martin asked, do you use flash in your street photography? Martin, I do not. I just use natural light, but I do know a couple people who do. They are more shooting for the shock factor of getting some really up-close personal face shots of people being surprised that they're being photographed. And flash really brings a lot of attention to you, whether it's in the middle of the day or not. Flash is definitely going to bring attention. So one of the things that you try to do if you're getting into street photography is to be a little bit more subtle and to really try to blend in with the crowd. Oh, another tip. If you're starting out in street photography and you're uncomfortable, go to a place where there's tons of photographers. So maybe go to a touristy type of spot in your area. Go to areas where there are a lot of photographers and photographers are not, you're not going to be the only one with a camera. That is a great way to start as well. It will make you feel right at home. And another fun little tip is if you bring a friend and you have that friend go stand next to maybe the couple or the person you want to take a picture of, you can first focus in on your friend and then subtly move your camera, but it seems like you're taking a picture of your friend. And I know that's kind of sneaky, but it does help with making you feel more comfortable and getting you into the medium of street photography. Thank you so much for joining me. This is a great topic, and I've had a lot of fun actually going out and shooting and researching different techniques on how to shoot because this is getting me more comfortable with street photography as well. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.